This week we're going to be taking a look at the classical religions. And we're going to start out here looking at the classical Middle Eastern religions, which will include Judaism, Zoroastrianism, and Christianity. And just as a little review here, we have religions developed because we're trying to explain what we cannot explain, and it brings about a sense of community, so it unites the people. And we have many different types with polytheism, with many gods, monotheism, there's one God, monism or deism, there's some God or some overarching spirit that goes through everything. And then you have kind of the agnosticism and atheism, where agnostics don't really believe in a God, but there could be one, and then atheists, where they don't believe in a God at all. Just as a kind of reminder from what we talked about before with those. Now, first religion we'll take a look at here is Zoroastrianism, and Zoroastrianism was founded by a guy named Zarathustra, and he is from Persia, and it is one of the first monotheistic religions. It will actually be kind of the second, although it argues that it's the first, in that there's one god named Ahura Mazda, who you can see in that picture over there. He's kind of a guy with wings, and they have one symbol, which is the eternal flame, which you can see right next to him. And this religion develops in Persia, pretty much stays only really focused in Persia, but it will influence Judaism, Christianity, and Islam in some of the beliefs of good versus evil, and in this idea of an afterlife in heaven and hell. It's believed to have influenced it there. So the big focus of Zoroastrianism and why it influences those religions is because it talks about good versus evil. It is a constant fight between good and evil, and Ahura Mazda, or good, will eventually overcome everything. And so it's all about, as you can see there, under Ahura Mazda in the picture, good thoughts, good works, and good deeds. And this religion is still around today. It's not as big as it was back then, but it is still around. One of the other big things with it's a tolerant religion. It doesn't go and try to wipe out others, which is why Judaism is around to, or is allowed to still flourish, and other religions in the Persian Empire. So that's Zoroastrianism. Then we have Judaism. Judaism was founded by the Hebrews, and they settle in their kingdom of Israel, or Judah. And originally it's a united kingdom, and then the kingdom splits after the reign of Solomon, and we have two kingdoms of Israel and Judah, with Judah lasting longer than Israel, but both will get conquered by the Assyrians and the Babylonians. Or, well, will both get conquered by the Babylonians. Israel will get conquered by the Assyrians before that. But it is the first monotheistic religion, and their God is known as Yahweh, which you might see with vowels in it or not vowels. Just depends. And it's founded by a guy named Abraham, who lived in the Fertile Crescent in the Tigris and Euphrates area, and then moved his people, his family, to Israel and that area, and they started to settle there. And their holy book is known as the Tanakh, or you might hear it as the Torah, which is the first 5 books, or just as the Hebrew Bible. And so that's what guides the people. The main teachings in Judaism is that the Israelites, or the Hebrews, have a covenant with God, and they are unique in that situation, and that it is their job to make sure that they follow God's laws and are a light unto the world as to how people should be acting. And so an example of these laws, and the most common laws, are the Ten Commandments, which you might know, and they guide the people, but there are more than just 10 commandments. There are hundreds of laws that they have to follow to keep themselves clean and in good standing with God. And Judaism is really just a small religion, though. It's really just focused in Israel. It doesn't really spread out much. They're not trying to preach it very much. But the reason why Judaism is a very, very important religion, and one that you need to remember, is because it will be the foundation for 2 of the world's largest religions. And they are our 2 biggest religions today, in Christianity and Islam. Jesus was a Jewish religious teacher. He was trying to reform it, and we're going to talk about him in a second. And then Islam claims that they're descendants from Ishmael, who was one of the sons of Abraham, but kind of gets pushed away. And so when Muhammad creates this religion, then we'll see the sons of Ishmael, the Muslims, come about as part of this tradition of Judaism, or building on top of Judaism. Now, the last religion and the biggest religion from this area is going to be Christianity that we'll look at. And it rises up out of Israel. It rises up out of Jewish traditions. It is not a completely new religion. Instead, with Jesus and Paul, they weren't looking to establish a new religion necessarily, especially Jesus. Instead, he was trying to preach some new ideas, some ways to reform Judaism, to make it open to more people, to make it less about the rules and more about helping each other and focusing on what's important. And so it develops out of this. It is not a completely new religion. And so what we have is we have that God from Judaism, Yahweh. He's kind of the center God, but with what happens to Jesus, Jesus becomes a God, so he gets viewed as part of that God, but a separate part. And then you have another idea, the Holy Spirit, which is the Spirit of God, that is another part of that God. So it's one God, it's monotheistic. However, we call this the Trinity in Christianity, and it is God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit are all kind of combined as one. And maybe the best way to think of it, if this is a confusing idea, is to think of it as the elements. If you know anything about chemistry, you can think of it as water, or the states of matter. And that if we have water, there are three different states you can have it in. You can have it as a solid, as ice. You can have it as water, and you can have it as a vapor, or in the air. So you can think of it kind of God being broken down into that, if that helps you understand the Trinity. Now, again, this was founded by Jesus of Nazareth. He was a teacher, also a carpenter, but he preaches for 3 years how to reform Judaism, and his teaching is very, very, very radical, and it's very much part of the poor, or brings the poor in, wants to elevate them and help them, and the powers that be don't really like that. The Romans are threatened by it. The religious leaders are threatened by it even more, and so they have him crucified. And he dies. And usually a religion would end at this point. But his disciples, and then another guy named Paul, who's from Tarsus and will become a saint, they will go and spread this religion, especially Paul. Paul is a major figure here because he's the missionary to the Gentiles, who are the non-Jews, and he is the reason why Christianity spreads from just being a new form of Judaism to a whole new religion. And he'll incorporate all of them and bring them all together in the new church. And so the focus of this was reforming Judaism, but it's also trying to be more inclusive, bring more people into Judaism, or this religion, be more egalitarian, less about social classes, and bring people all on the same footing. Everyone is equal under God's eyes. So they get rid of classes. They initially are trying to equalize genders. God doesn't prefer men over women. As you can see with Jesus, he goes and preaches with women and talks to women and brings them into his ministry. Now, none of them are one of the disciples, but he brings them in. Okay? And so the big thing for this whole religion is this idea that you love each other. That's the main teaching, is love each other, and then everything else kind of works its way around that. And because of that, women will get a voice. Now, initially they have a larger voice, and we'll talk about that here in a second, on how Christianity changes between the early church to the later church under Rome. But women have a voice, and they'll keep a voice as they can be nuns and have a monastic life. Okay? So, last part with this is there's a major shift in Christianity. When Rome adopts it as an official religion, because it wasn't a religion right away, for about 300 or so years, it is viewed as a cult and as a religion that is going against Rome. And so Christians, before Rome adopts it, the Roman Empire adopts it, are persecuted. But because of this, that brings them together, makes it a very tight-knit community. They are very inclusive with whoever wants to be in. They work to help each other out. Everyone's equal, whether it's gender or social class. Women set up churches, and these churches are not like a church building. They're actually just in homes, and they got to keep it secret because if someone finds out that they're a Christian, they can be killed because it is illegal to be a Christian. And also, you have a lot of diverse beliefs because people don't fully understand the teachings of Jesus. And if you look at the church today, we have many different branches because of that, because of people's own ideas on, well, how does the Trinity work, or was Jesus fully God or not God, or what book should be in the Bible. So there's a lot of diverse beliefs, and that will continue to be there, and that was viewed as kind of a good thing then. But then when Rome adopts it or brings it in as a religion, Constantine allows it to be a religion, and he'll become the first emperor to be a Christian. And then Theodosius will make it an official religion of the empire. But when it comes into Rome, it adopts Roman culture, and so it becomes patriarchal. They develop large. So with the patriarchal part, women kind of get kicked out and take a lesser role. The only major female figure now in the church would be Mary, the mother of Jesus. And then you have large public churches that are now built. Temples are converted, or they build new cathedrals to house everyone. It becomes a very public religion, and this is where it spreads like wildfire. And then the priests take control, and they, the ones centered out of Rome and Constantinople, will lead the charge on what should be taught. And so this is really done by the Pope, who's the leader in Rome, and the Patriarch, who is the leader in the East in Constantinople. And we'll eventually have a split there, but the Pope kind of takes maybe the head, because was the head of the empire. And so they formalize teachings. They set up the Bible with the books that should be in it. They say this is what God looks like. This is what, and these are all the things that you should believe. And if you don't believe them, then we go back to that persecution thing. So they'll persecute Christians if they don't believe the right stuff. And so we'll see Christianity will become united under that, or under those ideas, and we'll have a united church for several hundred years until we have something called the Great Schism, which we'll talk about next unit.